What's up, people? Thank y'all for tuning in again. Y'all so real. What's up with it? Okay. So I want to come to you guys with five and an honorable mention. Books that I really thoroughly enjoyed last year that I want to pass along to you guys. And so none of these are new, but they were new to me at the time. So first up, I have The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, and it's basically a memoir, now a movie. And honestly, I had very low expectations when I read this book. I bought it for 25 cents at the library, which surprised me. And a few years prior, my friend was reading it, but I'm like, that's just a little book that she reading. It's probably not that good, yada, yada, yada. But once I gave it a chance, I could not put it down. So basically, Jeanette talks about what it was like living with her two parents and her siblings. And she, after reading it, it just lets me know that her parents were mentally ill and mentally unstable and just unstable people in general. And it was so wild to read. It was such a roller coaster. And one day she told herself that, you know what, I can't keep living like this. This is not normal. This is not what my life is going to be like. So her sister graduated high school and went to New York, and she followed after her maybe like a little less than a year later. And her parents, kind of weren't feeling it, but she had to do what she had to do. And I really love how she started out the book. So the book starts off like she's leaving some fancy event, and next thing you know, she looks to her right or her left and she sees her mom in the dumpster. She's homeless. And so that had me hooked from that point on out. And I'm just like, wow. And reading her book just lets me know there's always somebody that has it way worse than you. You might think you have it bad, or you're down bad, or you're out on your luck, quote unquote. But reading her story was like, my life, my struggles are nothing compared to hers. Not that I have to compare, but just reading her story, I just naturally compared what I've seen, what I've experienced, and it's just like, wow. You just never know what people are going through. Like, it was certain points in the book where her and her siblings didn't even bathe or didn't even have clean clothes, that they were just wearing the same old things weeks and weeks at a time. And it was just like, wow. And she was just dirty all the time. And people treated them bad because of that. Anyway, that book was on point. That book was on point. So I would definitely recommend that. Please read that. So next up, I have $40 Million Slaves by William Roden, or I hope that's how you pronounce it. And I'm not one of those people that is into sports, like not even a little bit. Like, nah, not that girl. But reading about origins of like Kentucky Derby or boxing or baseball, because I'm from a different generation than what William is, obviously, it was just really interesting to read. I mean, like, I knew a little bit about Jackie Robinson, but I didn't know as much as what they were putting in this book. And they, meaning William, I didn't know that much about the Negro Black League. Didn't know not a lick of anything. But reading about that really helped me see what these sports were like back then. For example, like what it was like. Actually, no, I don't want to get into that. I don't want to tell too much of the book. But he's basically going into origins of these sports and relating it to slavery and relating it to how times were like for Black people that back then when they wanted to play these sports. So reading this was also enjoyable. And I had this book for 4 years. And when I first started it, I'm like, and this kind of boring, yada, yada, yada. And I just put it down until one day I was bored, didn't want to watch TV. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just pick up a book off my shelf because I didn't want to buy any new books. And once I started getting into the good parts of this book, I'm like, wow, why did I wait 4 years? It was well worth the read, which all of these books are again, but that for sure was well worth the read. So next up, I have Stephen King on writing, a memoir of the craft. And of course, Stephen King is a legend, but reading a nonfiction book of his, it was like, wow, this man really has a gift. And I thoroughly enjoyed reading about what it was like when he first started up trying to, build up his craft and work on his craft. And I liked reading about what his mindset was like. What was he going through when he started creating certain things? I also, by reading this book, I didn't realize that certain movies were his book. Like Carrie, I didn't know that Carrie was a book first. And he just talks about like what his inspiration was for some of those characters. And I really loved it. And, for those that don't know, I consider myself to be a writer. And so reading this book was really right up my alley. Really right up my alley. I don't want to say I thoroughly enjoyed it again for the third time, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. For real. It was on point. I loved it, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone that specifically is a fan of Stephen King. You'll really love this book too. So next up, I have The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks by Rebecca Skloot. And I had so many emotions from reading this book. Like, so many. From anxiety to heartbreak to being angered to being sad. It was so many emotions. And initially, I kind of felt a way that the author was white. I'm like, what is this white lady going to tell about, what she got to say? But after reading her book, I take back everything that I thought and that I said out loud to my friend. Because I read this for book club. That's why I have so many notes. She actually did a very great job. And it is, how can I say, everything worked out that the way that it was supposed to for her to write this book. I enjoyed it. At first I thought it was going to be too sciencey, but it was perfect. I loved it. I loved how she would flash back from the 50s to present time, which present time at the time of this book is like 2010-ish. I liked how they talked about Henrietta Lacks' family history. Like, she really went in depth about even like back to like slave times. And I was just like, wow, I can't go that far back with my own family. So to read about it in someone else's family, it was nice to see. Like, it was nice to see that her hard work and her 10 years of putting in that time and research and dedication, it really paid off. And you could really tell that she was thoroughly researched when she wrote this book. And I can appreciate an author like that, that's serious about her stuff. Next up, I don't have the physical copy of the book, but next, Trevor Noah, Born in Crime. And once my editing skills are more on point, I'll be able to link it up top and you'll be able to see a picture pop up. But in the meantime, you just get in the description box below. For real. But Trevor Noah, Born in Crime, I also read for book club, and I did not know what to expect because I didn't know anything about him. I didn't even know he was a comedian, didn't know anything prior to reading. And so I kind of went in blind, like low expectations again. And wow, I loved his book. Loved reading about what his life was like in South Africa, having a black mom, having a white dad, and basically having to live as if he didn't exist because it was forbidden at the time in South Africa, and how his family was treating him differently because he was of a lighter complexion. And it was just very well written. I have no complaints. Shout out to Trevor Noah. Seriously, shout out to Trevor Noah. That was a really fantastic read. Out of all of the books I just mentioned, Trevor Noah, Born a Crime is my favorite one, if I had to choose. And Stephen King would be number 2. But Trevor Noah, wow, really good book. I loved the added humor in there. And it's so crazy how people with like a lot of pain built up, they end up being like the funniest people. That is so odd. So odd. But Trevor Noah, Born a Crime, definitely in my top from last year. So that concludes all of my books, but I wanted to leave y'all with an honorable mention that I said I was going to give. And this is my only fiction of the list. It is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. It's about a black girl, white guy. They meet in the elevator, and the guy invites the girl to be his date to a wedding. And from that point on, they start a connection that they thought might have possibly just ended as a fling, but it blossomed and it flourished. And reading the reviews they gave, like, I saw a lot of negative reviews, but maybe they just didn't like the characters themselves. I could see how they could not like them, but to me, they just seemed human, like they were still learning about themselves, learning about what they like, what they don't like, how to communicate better. And honestly, I'm here for the romance. I really loved it. I loved the sex scenes. I was here for it, and I loved it. And so all the people out there that want to read a mushy fiction story, romance story, read this one because it's on point. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to read more work by her. Her meaning Jasmine Guillory. Only thing I didn't like about this book itself is just how small it is and how small the words are. That I wasn't feeling. But that I'm not going to take away from the story itself. So that is all. Thank you guys for tuning in and helping me, not helping me, but letting me voice what I feel about my love for books, baby. Thank you guys. See y'all in my next video.